So we talked about communication through our body movement, which is kinesics, oculesics, which is our eye contact, proxemics, the way we use space, and haptics, how we use touch. Now let's go into how we communicate through time, chronemics. Be aware that how you use your time is going to convey a strong message to people. People will interpret your emotions and even your personal values from how you use your time. Case in point, the early versus late perception. I always ask students, hey, what do you think about people who are always early? And the typical answers are, they're responsible, they're punctual, they care about other people's wants and time and needs. I always have that one person, they don't have anything else to do with their time, so that's why they're always early. But there's usually a lot of positive associations with early people, especially in the US. And then there's that moment where I say, okay, well, what do we think about late people? They're lazy. They don't care about anybody else's time but their own. They have horrible time management skills. So there are all those moments where people say negative things, and then someone will say, well, maybe they just get stuck in traffic a lot. Perhaps. But there's that early versus late perception and how people start attributing things just based on how you use your time. Be aware that even how we use time can be culturally regulated. So, for example, the monochronic versus polychronic different cultures. If you're a part of a monochronic culture, then you like to schedule your time. You break it up into tiny segments that are manageable, and you probably value promptness. Can you guess where the US falls? Yes, we are a monochronic culture. There are people who have their schedules color-coded, timed down to the 10-minute increments of how they're going to use their day. Then there's polychronic cultures. In a polychronic culture, time is a little bit more fluid. They still value being on time, and there's still a concept of time. But they're more concerned with what's happening during that moment. Sometimes they'll try to do several tasks at one time, and they're not as concerned with being prompt as in monochronic cultures. So I had one student from the Caribbean, and she said, hey, to me, polychronic culture kind of sounds like island time. And it makes sense because typical polychronic cultures tend to be the Caribbean, Hispanic, African, and some Asian cultures. For example, my friend from Malaysia who said they tend to always run late. I'm not so sure exactly if that was just her experience or if it was a full-blown cultural experience. I do know that monochronic cultures tend to be more of your European cultures, the US, Canada. Asian cultures such as Japan and China tend to be very monochronic. Then olfactics, how we communicate through smell. So I've been mentioning throughout that all these different types of nonverbal communication can be cultural. So even think about how smell itself can be culturally based, because in different cultures, different smells will have different meanings. I wish I could go more into it, but we just don't have the time. Think about how smell can trigger memories. You smell cookies, then you think about grandma. Or you smell something that's a bit pungent, and you think, oh, I remember that smell. Something's gone bad in the refrigerator. Let me clean it out now. Now, while smells are often unintentional, maybe you didn't mean to wear that certain smell, or something made a smell that you didn't think it should, or didn't mean to have happen, it's still going to carry a pretty strong message. Then we can also communicate through our voice, vocalics. So this is how you say something in some ways. So the volume, how loud or how soft your voice is when you talk. Sometimes we get loud, we really get excited or get angry, but then we soften up just to whisper and share a secret. or for shy. Think about your tone, whether it's an enthusiastic tone, an angry tone, a happy tone, or a sad tone, and how people start to understand your message in a different way based on it. Pitch, how high or how low your voice is. The rate, how fast or how slow you speak. The pauses, whether it actually be a silent pause or a vocalized pause, the vocal fillers that people use. So again, those communicate a message. Think about how you gasp or how you sigh. Again, communicating messages to people just through the utterances of your vocal cords. We can even communicate through objects. Now, the fancy term for this is objectics. Pretty easy to guess, right? Just add ICS to it. Now, this can be your clothing, it can be the artifacts that you have, it can be your environment. So, when I say artifacts, think about when people go in search of some ancient culture and they dig up things that used to belong to them. The pottery, the weapons that they use. And they call those the artifacts. You have artifacts too. Whether it be your purse or your backpack. Maybe it's your favorite lucky hat. Again, that's all communicating messages to people. Even the environment and how you decorate it is going to communicate a message. There are the fixed features, like the wall, the ceilings, the floors and doors. Think about it. We pay people to come up with how to design a ceiling, a floor. So we wanted to convey a message to people subconsciously. Or even the semi-fixed features, like the furniture, the lighting, the use of color. I know I will change out a throw pillow in a different color and it will just change the mood of the room. Now, there's a lot to unpack with color, psychology, and how that influences us non-verbally. Again, so much to unpack, but don't have the time in this one video. But be aware that our objects, they express our attitudes, our feelings, our moods, our beliefs, our interests, our hobbies, and even our ideologies, such as someone wearing a hijab or a cross, and how those communicate beliefs. I know sometimes when I'm feeling a little bit sad, I wear a bright yellow shirt, and people immediately start to say, oh, you seem like you're really happy today. And something about the yellow triggers my happiness feelings, and I become happier even throughout the day. Or the fact that some people will have a U of A t-shirt on, or something Razorbacks oriented, and I'll say, are you a fan? And they'll say yes. Sometimes they're not, and they just happen to have one, but usually they're a fan of the team. Now, your textbook did not mention communicating through physical appearance, but even our physical appearance communicates messages to other people. The visible attributes, such as how you do your hair that day, or if you trim your beard that day, right? That's going to communicate messages to people just visually. I know some people will think certain ways of body types. Oh, well, person A looks like this, so they must be really physically fit. Whereas person B doesn't look like person A, so maybe they're just not fit. And sometimes that's true, and sometimes it's not. But people are taking these things non-verbally and creating meaning out of it. Even facial symmetry can communicate messages to people. There have been so many studies that non-verbally people are attracted to facial symmetry. But there's also been a few studies out there that have disrupted that particular ideal. And even physical appearance can be cultural. If you look on YouTube or Google even, just cultural variations in physical beauty, it is shocking what is considered physically beautiful with different cultures and even across different time periods. I know that the Marilyn Monroe figure used to be very appealing, then it fell out of style. I think for women in the US, having a curvy figure but not too curvy is what's in right now. Guys being what someone referred to as lumbersexual, where they have a little bit of scruff but not too much scruff. Maybe they have a man bun but not too long of a man bun. Again, it varies. No matter what nonverbal communication situation you find yourself in, there are some guidelines. If you don't know what's being nonverbally communicated to you, ask clarifying questions. Don't be ashamed of saying, "I don't know what that means." But don't assume that other people understand your nonverbals either. Because sometimes, especially when there are cultural differences, the nonverbals won't translate. Be aware to control your nonverbal reactions. A funny story with this for me was, again, most of my stories revolve around my sister, but years ago, I had a really strong sinus reaction where my sinuses drained into my eyelids, and so my eyelids swelled up. And as swollen as they are, I can still see. Not very well, but I can still see, and I'm walking around the house, and I'm with my parents, and they look at me and they go, "Oh, okay, we're gonna work on this. We're gonna get you some medicine." My sister hasn't seen me yet, and I walk into a hallway. The hallway is dark, and she says, "Oh, you don't look that bad. I don't know what they're complaining about." And I stop and I think, I'm in a dark hallway right now. Let me turn on the light. And as soon as I turn back around from turning on the lights, she goes, "Oh!" and jumps back physically. In that moment, her nonverbal reaction was pretty obvious to how she felt about my face. She apologized and said that she probably should have controlled her reaction, but honestly, remembering how I looked in that moment, I don't blame her. Think about also using situationally appropriate nonverbals. I know as an instructor, when a student is running late and they just walk in and walk towards the front of the class when I'm giving a lecture, there's always this gut reaction in me that says I should stop the class and focus on them and make sure that they know not to just walk up in front of me because other students will pay attention to them as well. So think about the situation. Think about the context. What is appropriate in that moment? Also think about learning cultural differences and nonverbal meaning. If you expect to travel in the next few years, Google is a good friend here, YouTube is a good friend here. Learn what's culturally appropriate. Because maybe you pointing at someone with one finger here is no big deal. But in a lot of Asian cultures, that's considered rude. You would point with your whole hand. Maybe you signal someone to come over by taking one finger and moving it back and forth towards you and away from you. Say, "Come here." In other cultures, that's soliciting someone for sexual favors and can get you into a physical assault if you proposition the wrong person. So again, be aware of how you are using your nonverbal communication and how people will understand it. So like I said, there is so much to unpack about nonverbal communication. We really just tipped the iceberg here with what does it all mean, what are the different principles of nonverbal communication, how does it function, and the different types, as well as how we can be better nonverbal communicators. So the next time someone says, "Hey, are you upset?" think about, why are they asking that question? What are your nonverbals saying?